Ballyclare District Historical Memorial Association. The Solway Martyrs. The 17th century was a horrifically barbaric period in time in Scotland known as the Killing Times, and saw the Scottish Covenanters hunted, tortured and savagely executed for their uncompromising belief in the Presbyterian faith. Covenanters derive from the word covenant, a biblical term meaning an agreement with God, were members of the Scottish religious and political movement of the 17th century with their loyalty to the Presbyterian Church of Scotland. The National Covenant signed by the Scottish Presbyterians in 1638 stated that Jesus Christ was the head of their church and not the king, standing strong in their defiance against the introduction of the Book of Common Prayer introduced by Charles I, who stated that to oppose this would be treasonous. The persecution of the Covenanters began in 1660, with King Charles II restored to the throne and then reneging on all promises made, then set out to eradicate the Covenanters, man, woman and child, in the most bloody, barbaric genocide. One of the saddest executions carried out during these killing times was that of the Solway Martyrs, Margaret McLaughlin and Margaret Wilson. Margaret McLaughlin was a 65-year-old widow at the time of her execution. Margaret had been married to carpenter John Milligan, and it is recorded that John had been imprisoned for a time and also had to pay a daily fine to local authorities because of their Presbyterian beliefs. It's also recorded that Margaret was known for her integrity and piety. Margaret Wilson was an 18-year-old daughter of a rich farmer. She had a sister, Agnes, aged 13, and a brother, Thomas, aged 16. Although their parents had conformed to the worship of the parish church and its ways, Margaret and her siblings refused to attend with them, preferring to worship with psalm singers in the woods. Their absence in church was notified to the authorities, and they were forced to live in the hills and moors. Their father's farm was regularly searched, and he was forced to pay fines throughout the rest of his life for his children's beliefs and disobedience. Both Margaret Wilson and Margaret McLaughlin had been reported to authorities, along with Agnes Wilson and many others, for their disobedience in worship and refusing to accept James VII as head of the church. Margaret and Agnes Wilson were arrested after being reported by a so-called friend and taken to the same prison where Margaret McLaughlin had already been imprisoned after being arrested for her refusal to attend service or swear the oath. The three women were brought to Wigan Court on the 13th of April 1685. They were then falsely charged with attending the battles at Ayers Moss and Bothwell Bridge and being present at secret meeting houses. All women were given an offer of leniency if they were to swear the oath of abjuration. These brave women stood by their convictions and refused to swear the oath. They then refused to kneel for sentence. The soldiers then forced them to the ground. Although Agnes was released on £100 bail paid by her father, both Margarets were sentenced to death by drowning. Margaret Wilson's father travelled to Edinburgh to appeal his daughter's sentence, but it was too late. By the time he got back, sentence was already passed. Other friends had tried to appeal Margaret Wilson's sentence, and on the 30th of April, Edinburgh Council overturned the sentence and cancelled the execution. But this order was willfully ignored by the Council of Galloway, and the execution was carried out on the 11th of May 1685. The elder Margaret was tied to a stake further out to sea than the younger Margaret, who was tied to a stake closer to shore. The idea was that after watching her elderly friend horrifically suffer and die, she would save herself, swear the oath, and give up her beliefs. While her elderly friend was writhing, fighting for her last breath, a soldier asked the young Margaret Wilson what she thought of her friend now. And the young woman replied, "I see Christ wrestling there." As the young Margaret herself gasped her last breaths, a soldier lifted her head out of the water and asked her to say, "God save the King." She said, "God save him if he will, for it is his salvation I desire." She was then asked again to take the oath, and she replied, "I will not. I am one of Christ's children. Let me go." The soldier held her head under the water until she died. There isn't much written anywhere regarding Agnes Wilson, and although her father lost the farm and died penniless, his son Thomas Wilson survived through these killing times and had joined as a soldier in the army of King William of Orange. After returning home to Scotland, he eventually was able to buy back his father's farm. These women were murdered for their religious beliefs, nothing else. Because of this, the bodies of Margaret Wilson and Margaret McLaughlin couldn't be recovered until darkness fell and the tide was out, where they were taken to the kirkyard at Wigtown. A memorial stone stands in the place where these ladies were executed.